Good morning, everyone. So, as you know, my name is Lila Lalling, and so one of the things that I just wanted to start off with, as Swamiji was so beautifully articulating, is from a yoga perspective, and even now from a quantum physics science perspective, they're finding that there is no difference between the inner and the outer, that we are one and the same. And I think what's really important to think about as we start this weekend is to understand that you're Koshik being, with all of your layers of multidimensionality, is directly correlated to the magnetic field of the earth and is also in relationship with the earth and her body. So it's more like we're cells in her body than it is that we are humans and nature is out there, right? So as I can see, there's just a couple people online who are outside right now, and most of us are in our artificial environment away from nature, and myself included. In fact, this is a fake plant in my parents' living room, right? And so we've found this disconnect from the very essence of where we were born. And so for many years of my life, climate awareness has been there, environmentalism has been there, and really where the whole idea came to kind of transition out of teaching only yoga philosophy and getting more into how do we heal this crisis that we're having. um, Share where it started because all of us know him. So in 2017, I went on a 4-month pilgrimage from South India up to North India, was teaching along the way, and had the blessed opportunity to go into Swami Vishnudevanandaji's cave. And when I was in his cave meditating at the banks of the Ganga River, I had a very kind of, I don't know how to explain it except that it felt like my heart was exploding, like almost like I couldn't contain the high frequency that was there. And in that, I knew something was happening that was changing and shifting within me, but I had no idea what that would be. And when I came out of the darkness of the cave and came out of his living space, the sun was just coming up over the mountain peaks, the Himalayan mountain peaks. And it was the most majestic view I have yet to see in my life. It was something that took you from this very womb-like experience into this light and expansiveness in nature. And I heard 2 words, eco-yoga. And I knew it was a message from Swamiji, and I didn't know what to do with it. I had no idea about what that meant for me. And now for 4 years, I've been listening and taking steps and studying to try to understand what exactly the mission is now for me in my life. And when I started diving into climate science, as I'm sure many of you are doing, in just the more media, and it's becoming more of a sphere in our awareness, it's really difficult to hear some of the information and to learn about the information in the state of the world and the pretty massive crisis that we're in. We're in not only a personal crisis, a humanity crisis, we're also in a planetary crisis. And really, when you look at both of these crises, as Dr. Zach Bush said so articulately, he said in a podcast I was listening to with Charles Eisenstein, he said, we are in a philosophical crisis that is creating a health crisis. A philosophical crisis that is creating a health crisis and a planetary crisis. So we know that we're losing approximately 200 species every 24 hours, according to um, the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity. So what that means is we're losing our diversity. We're losing our species, our habitat, our ecosystems are in a state of collapse. And we know that since 2016, every year, the global temperature is rising, the average global temperature. So that means, like, if planet Earth was a body and she had a temperature, every year her temperature is going up and up and up and up, as if she has a fever. And we also know that we have so many greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and carbon in the atmosphere that it's causing droughts and melting of ice caps and ice sheets, and we're getting floods and fires from the droughts. And I can go on and on and on and on. And when we look at what is happening with the collapse of the planet, we have to also see the mirror that we also are having a crisis within the human species. So our cancer rates are 1 in 3 in America. So 1 in 3 people will develop, or may develop, I like to say better, may develop some form of cancer. We also have, which just came out, which was kind of a very interesting statistic and sad statistic to me, and I'm sure many of you would agree, is that, and this again was in the podcast I was just listening to, is that one in 1960s, 1.2% was chronic juvenile diseases. So that means children with chronic diseases. In the 1960s was 1.2%. Today, it's 52% of children suffer from a chronic disease. 52%, just from 1960s to 2020, right? The average American spends 93% of their life inside a car, a vehicle, your work facility, your home, right? So this disconnection from the very essence of how our physical body evolved, which is Mother Earth, Mother Nature, our Earth Mother, has this separation is causing a tremendous amount of disease, not only physical, but also mental. So for example, with COVID right now, and in the last year of this pandemic, we're seeing a spike in mental health care. So we know we have a mental health crisis, we know we have a physical crisis and a planetary crisis. Now, all these crises combined are really just one crisis. And I believe it's the crisis of consciousness. So meaning we've lost a lot of the spirituality, the sacredness, and the connection of life. And one of the most beautiful things that I have learned in the 20 years I've been studying and living yoga and studying the scriptures is being reminded that the healing essence of yoga, right? So many of us have found healing effects from yoga because that's what keeps us active in the yoga community. It's what keeps us active in our prayers and our meditations and our sadhanas. And it's because we see the healing effects. I know for myself, yoga helped to heal epilepsy. And many other, little like health mishaps along the way, mental, emotional, physical, right? And so the yogas, the many, many, many paths of yoga all help to bring healing and balance, not only to ourselves, but also to our ecosystems, our families, and our greater environment and collective Earth Mother. So when we heal ourselves as a cell in the body of Mother Earth, our Earth Mother, we also heal her, right? So there is this symbiotic relationship. And when you look at what are the healing modalities that aid in bringing homeostasis and balance back into our physical body or into our koshic being, we see a lot of times that those medicines come in the form of something simple. Spending time in nature, meditating, quieting the mind, taking herbal supplements, eating an organic, natural diet, spending time with just your breath and prana and energy. We also know that there's a practice that you'll practice this weekend called earthing, where you go out into the grass or onto the ground of Earth Mother, and we stand and connect. And that has scientific studies and medical studies that have proven to reduce inflammation, to reset your serotonin levels, to help to create a more connection in your biofield, in your energetic body. And it also helps to set your circadian rhythm. And so just standing outside barefoot has a lot of rebalancing that happens on many levels and subtle levels of our existence. So even though it seems as though we're in a great state of collapse, and that as you lean into this information and these teachings, it can often feel very overwhelming and very sad. Like, especially if you're an empath, there is very much what's called eco grief, where we start to grieve the state of the world, because according to climate scientists, according to 99.99% of climate research and 97% of climate scientists, human lifestyle is the cause of the crises we have right now. So when we look at the teachings of yoga and the scriptures of yoga, we know that the Bhagavad Gita was left for this time of the Kali Yuga, of this time of destruction, this time of despair. And we also know that Hatha Yoga, according to the stories with Shiva and Parvati, and is left for this particular time to help restore and rebalance our physical and energetic bodies, as well as help to elevate our level of consciousness. So I feel that yoga is the medicine that we need. And I don't think it's by chance that pre-pandemic that yoga had a huge spike in becoming mainstream. It became mainstream to the point where we're able to see that there is this great surge of yoga, even in the corners of the world that normally would not have it be allowed, or it was restricted from being practiced or kept very quiet. And we know that in the United States, from a study from Yoga Alliance, there's 36 million yoga practitioners just in the United States alone. Now, one of the things that we know in yoga studies is the idea of collective consciousness. And I was a part of a really important, I feel, very important study with Eric Phillips Nania, who wrote Climate Change Yoga. He's a presenter this weekend, and you'll meet him on Monday. But he has all the science. He's a science guy. So he has all the science on climate science, and also about consciousness studies, about the levels of like how to use an EEG, for example, to study brainwave activity as a meditator, or an EKG for your heart resonance and things like that. So in reading his book, I had come to the study that was from the Transcendental Meditation Group that did collective meditations in Washington, D.C. for peace within the city. And over the course of this study, which I believe was right around 10 years, they found that there was a reduction in crime by 48%. So in Washington, D.C., because they were hooked up with the police department for this study, these meditators did collective meditations, and it reduced the crime rate. So when they were meditating on peace and love and harmony, that small group of people impacted the crime rate of Washington, D.C. by 48%. So I also ran across in his book a study about how meditators had influenced the pH of water. So what happens is that we have carbon in the atmosphere. That carbon comes down, gets absorbed by the oceans, which causes a lower acidic level in the ocean water. So that change in pH, much like a change in the pH of our body, is killing off coral reefs, and the acidification of the oceans also is doing damage to the entire ecosystem of the ocean floor. So one of the things that we did was I wanted to test if that was possible. So a group of 18 of us in a pranayama immersion teacher training that I was facilitating, we did a climate-based meditation, which meant that we did some Kapalabhati and some alternate nostril breathing, Anuloma Viloma, for about 15 to 20 minutes. Then we went into a guided meditation to open our heart space and feel love for ocean water. My friend Sita, who also is teaching this weekend, is also a Sivananda teacher. She got ocean water from Long Beach, New York, from the Atlantic, and put it on an altar with Ganesha and a little candle. So we all were on Zoom and we did a climate meditation where we focused on that ocean water. First, we focused the mind, uplifted our prana. Then we sat collectively, was guided through a beautiful meditation about water and ocean water. And then we meditated for 20 minutes, pouring our love into that glass of water, of ocean water, knowing it was connected to all the water on the planet and all the water within us. And then people just spoke their prayers to the water and just thanked the water. And we changed the pH of that water. So we tested the water prior and we tested the water after. And when you see, and I'm just going to see if when you see the change and shift in the pH strips, you can't help but realize what the yogis were always telling us. Consciousness is one. And quantum physics is now saying that even in subatomic particles, so the earth is nothing more really, the physical plane is particles and energy and consciousness, right? So even in the subatomic particles and around the subatomic particles is 99 point, and there's 12 nines, 999999999% space. So everything that we see in this majestic world is particles, frequency, and consciousness. And when we use the collective power of consciousness and collective intention, we amplify the ability and the effect of that prayer and that sankalpa, that intention. And so I feel even more of an advocate now to really help to remind all of us as yoga practitioners, all of us as earthlings and global citizens, that we recognize the crisis not only that we are in personally as we worked through our own karmas and traumas, but as a whole, and also as a planet. And so this is just a little gentle reminder and nudge to let you know the power of your thoughts, the power of your prayers, the power of your actions. And when we always learn from our gurus about that your thoughts, your words, and your actions should align. In today's modern world, all of the industries want us to not have that align. That is in disharmony, right? That is not in alignment. Because when we go to the core of the essence of who we are, in the heart of our hearts, all of us are compassionate beings, empathetic beings that desire nothing more than peace and harmony, right? We don't desire bigger houses or fancier cars. Now, on a superficial level, that may be some people's wishes. But if you get to just the core of our essence, like in the years I've been teaching yoga, I ask people, what are you seeking? And I ask you today, what are you seeking? Just think about it for a second. What are you seeking? Put it in the chat box if you want. And in the years that I've been working with people and walking alongside them in the journey and paths of yoga, I've not heard one person say a new pair of jeans, a nicer car, a bigger house, Everyone is seeking something about love, peace, harmony, health, vitality, the essence of who we are. We're seeking our eternal self, right? And so, as we're seeking within us, that essence that is there, that essence isn't just within us, that essence is within this entire cosmic existence. So, when we find those moments of connection, of harmony, of bliss, of peace, we're allowing that resonance to come out. And it does actually, your aura system actually gets wider and bigger the more love based you get. And there's even tools now, science has tools that you can buy and you can measure like how much love is beaming through your heart chakra or how focused your mind is in your meditation. It can even tell you like if it's theta or gamma. You can like buy these little electrodes for home use, not by doctors in the hospitals. So if you're curious about that, you can test your own, like how's my mantra meditation doing? How's my focus and concentration? But the truth is in that meditation of 18 of us, all of us were householders. All of us were people just trying to do our best that felt overwhelmed in day-to-day life, that had struggles physically, some sort of mishap or some sort of imbalance in our physical body. And yet when we came together in this collective space of love and peace, we saw a direct imprint and effect on the ocean water. So when we were able to take that ocean water and pour it back in to into the ocean, right, which Sita did, then we see that there is a healing that can happen from a planetary level. And so I hope that you understand that your decisions in how to live life according to Dharma, how to live life according to what feels right, what feels in alignment to your soul's essence, that your choices that you have to make are there. Because as we learn in the Gita and from our teachers, is that every action has a sacrifice, right? So if every action has a sacrifice, it's important that we understand that the collapses we're experiencing are because of our collective thoughts, which lead to collective action. And there's that saying, right? We have enough abundance for every man's need, but not for one man's greed. Right? And that's exactly what's happened, is that industry stopped having limits on how big it could get. And as they continued to take over and consume the planet, and we were forced into, knowingly, unknowingly, into this industrialized modern life, it has separated us from our Earth Mother. So it has taken us from our Earth Mother, placed us in an artificial environment, that every single thing in this artificial environment, though, is from our Earth Mother. Everything. And anything plastic is from millions of years of evolution. And I like to say that the fossil fuels is like the synovial fluid in the joints. It's what keeps the joints active and fluid and flexible. But when we pull all that fossil fuel out and burn it and release it for production of plastics or for electricity or for all of these other components like making cars and computers and all of these things, we are taking that away. And then that makes more friction in the plates, which increases earthquakes and things like this. So if we look at the earth as a body from the macro to the micro, we see that our actions are harvesting from a very finite existence. Earth is not unlimited resources, not at all. And just to give you some statistics to set the tone for the weekend, and then I have positive statistics, so just hold on. I'm not going to be all doom and gloom, okay? So hang with me for a little bit, but it's important to know. So just 5 countries, including the UK and the United States, create more than 50% of the global greenhouse gas emissions of carbon dioxide emissions. Only 5 countries create 50% of the carbon dioxide emissions. As I explained, the past few years, since the past 7 years, have been the warmest on record. And carbon dioxide is up 46% from just before the Industrial Revolution. The world's oceans have risen about 1 inch in the past 50 years due to melting glaciers. And what's happening in the Arctic is that they're really nervous about, climate scientists are nervous about, is that there's methane gas trapped in the ice sheath, but the ice sheath is melting. So if that melts down and the methane is released, methane is 10 times more powerful than carbon dioxide emissions. And so that will exponentially 10 times increase the rapid rate of the superstorms, of the droughts, of the fires, of the displacement from climate crisis. And so we already are experiencing traumas. So they're calling it eco-trauma, which is from environmental experiences, like having to leave your home or your home being burned in a fire and things like that. So we already see that there's climate refugees, melting ice sheaths, that California, 99.84% of the land in California is suffering from drought, which obviously increases the amount of fires. And the costliest wildfire season on record cost $24 billion in damage. So when we look at climate science, looks at what can we do, the solutions actually save money. So the solutions is each of us not only working to continue to heal ourselves and bring harmony and balance within ourselves, within our mind, our words and actions, that they align, that we remember as yoga practitioners to live according to Dharma. And Dharma you can take by the yamas and niyamas. You can take from the principles of the Bhagavad Gita, right? And so if we live with appreciation that everything around you in your home is from Earth Mother. What does throwing something away mean? What does a purchase mean if you knew that it was to take from the limited resources? Would you just flippantly click through Amazon? Oh, I like this, I'll add this to my cart, right? And the average American or the average person actually spends 3 hours on your phone and more than 8 hours on a screen. The average person. And so what does it mean to you to live in harmony? What do you need in your life to feel more like you're living in balance? Right? Every action has a result. Every purchase has a limited resource attached to it. And yet, you have the consciousness, the heart, and the willpower, the strength of will, to make that difference in the world. You really do. And the more that you're out sharing the teachings of yoga with people, the more that you are practicing and learning about the climate crisis, making climate positive actions in your life, which we'll get into this weekend, you are being the medicine that we need, because we cannot wait for industry or government legislation to actually fix the problem that industry created, that greed created. This is going to be something where Mother Earth heals from the inside out. and we're her cells. You are her cell in her body. She is the most majestic, abundant mother and forgiving mother, right? She forgives all our actions, our wrong actions, all of our taking advantage. And whenever we need healing, we go to her and we get it. And she provides abundance of medicines in the forest, but that biodiversity we're losing. So we can keep it through the practices of permaculture and ecological restoration, regenerative living. We can restore what's been lost. It's not too late. So your role as a global citizen and a conscious global citizen, because you're a yoga practitioner, that makes you even more powerful and even more important to this crisis, right? So I hope that you feel inspired to know that though it can feel overwhelming, you're not alone. And that even though it can feel like you may not know where to start, by the end of this weekend, you'll have very clear tips and ways in which you can start to do really self-healing, planetary healing actions that help you to feel like hopeful in this time of great destruction and demise and grief, right? So you are the medicine. Yoga's the medicine. Well, I should say you are the medicine and yoga shows the way. We'll add that from Swami Vishnu Devananda. So I just want to conclude then by saying the rise in which the climate crisis and planetary crisis has been given love and attention and hope and is growing exponentially. The number of people who are becoming aware and making the choices they need to make. The most basic principle that you could do would be to eat a plant-based diet. If there was nothing else you did, if you moved to a plant-based diet and had a plant-based meal at least once a day, you will make a huge positive impact on the environment and on the crisis that we're having. Not only for your physical body, because you'd eat more grains and legumes and have a more alkaline diet with vegetables and things, but you will also have a huge impact in the reduction of the deforestation and the abuse and harm to animals. So be the medicine and keep up with your yoga practices as a way to guide you into how to be the medicine in a much larger scale than even within just yourself in your daily actions and your lifestyle. So I look forward to sharing more tools with you, and also you'll have this weekend some wonderful opportunities to go out off of the computer and connect with nature and then come back and we'll share. So during our workshops this weekend, we'll be doing some share time. It's not just lecture. You get a lot of share time yourself and to connect as a community. Thank you very much.